great perennials in our gardens that are what I consider tried and true. And Mary's Greenhouse in McMinnville, Tennessee is one of the best places to get some of these tried and true perennials. This is Beth Jacobs. She works here at Mary's and is actually part of the family. And Beth, thank you for having us here today. Let's get right into the plant material and talk about some of these great garden plants like this little Coreopsis up here at the front.
Okay. This is Rising Sun. It is a dwarf variety that blooms all summer. Great plant. Easy to grow, takes full sun, takes average soil.
Tolerates our heat.
Tolerates our heat very well.
Doesn't mind it. And that's really important here, of course, in our summer.
Yes.
Where we've got the heat and humidity piled on. And speaking of heat and humidity tolerant, one of the few Dianthus that I think is truly tried and true is Bath's Pink. And it just doesn't get any better than that as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, it is a great variety. Fragrant, early spring blooming, just a great plant.
And then for a little bit shadier spot in the garden, we go up here to the front to this really interesting spotted-leaved plant. Tell me a little bit about this.
Well, we have two varieties here. Their botanical name is Pulmonaria. This is Bertram Anderson with the blue blooms and Raspberry Splash with the pink. They are great for the shade gardens and will tolerate our summers more so than some of the other Pulmonaria varieties on the market.
Right. And they go good with hostas, ferns, those kinds of things, same kind of growing conditions. And then behind those, we have this really great foliage on this foxglove. I love foxglove almost as much for their foliage as I do for their blooms. Another part shade plant, and this is the true geranium, the perennial geranium, and not the pelargonium, zonal geranium, what we know as geranium. But the true perennial that comes back every year with these beautiful violet blue flowers, great sun plant, will do all right even in part shade. And the nice thing about this particular variety, I think, is that it's really heat tolerant and will bloom through the summer better than some of the old ones like Johnson's Blue and some of those. Now, speaking of tried and true, it just doesn't get much tougher than Candytuft. Tell me a little bit about this favorite old perennial.
This variety is Alexander's White. It's an evergreen Candytuft, blooms in the spring, early summer. It's a great plant. Does need good foliage, good drainage in the summertime though, or it could melt down on you.
Mm-hmm. And really nice because it's kind of a ground cover and it's evergreen. So it gives you some interest in the garden even when it's not in bloom and during the winter months when not a whole lot else is going on. Now right here we've got a favorite perennial salvia. Tell me about this plant.
That is May Night, and it is a great plant for a sun, even a part shade garden. Takes average soil, long blooming, nothing to it.
And if I'm not mistaken, that was a perennial plant of the year at one point in time, a few years back.
Yes, it was.
A great little vine here. We don't have any blooms on this one, but this is about the time of year, if this was a little bigger, that this would be in bloom. This is the Carolina Jessamine, not jasmine, but jessamine. It's a false jasmine, sort of. But a great little evergreen vine with little yellow, somewhat fragrant, bell-shaped flowers early in the spring. And if we have a warm winter, sometimes even sporadically through the late winter months. So it's a really nice feature for the garden and will also grow in a fair degree of shade, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it will.
Now, if we go up here just behind this other Pulmonaria, this is a plant that I think is so tried and true, it's almost overused in some cases, but there again, we are talking about plants that are tried and true, and they're tried and true for a reason, and that's because they perform every year, year in and year out, without much effort. This is Stella D'oro, the classic gold daylily that reblooms throughout the summer. One of my favorite shade garden perennials, probably my favorite shade garden perennial actually, is this great variegated Solomon seal. You can see the tiny little green and white flowers hanging here under the stem, which is what it does in the spring.
Yes.
And then you get this great foliage all summer long.
Yes.
The slugs and the snails don't seem to bother it like they bother some shade plants, and it turns yellow in the fall, so you really get good use out of that. If we go back to the front row now, we'll come down here to what has become a garden classic. This is the Becky Shasta daisy. Tell me a little bit about that one.
Well, Becky's bloom for quite some time throughout the summer. They have single white bloom with the yellow center. It's a great Shasta.
The Japanese painted fern with those silvery and burgundy leaves, and a really nice fern that does well in our heat and humidity.
Yes.
Will perform well here. This is a little bit of a new thing in German bearded iris, these reblooming varieties. Tell me a little bit about those.
Well, they bloom in the summer and then will rebloom, not quite as heavy a bloom, but will rebloom quite consistently in the late summer. And they come in several different colors. There's probably, we've probably got about 8 to 10 different colors of the rebloomers.
And there seem to be a few more coming on the
Yes.
market each year, so
Yes.
we'll see more and more of those. Another of my favorite plants for the shade, mostly because I remember this plant from my childhood in my grandmother's garden, and we have both forms here, the pink and the white bleeding heart.
Yes.
These are really good for the shade garden. Love those Hosta sort of conditions, and in a good spot will last for a fairly long time.
Yes, they will.
Bloom for a number of weeks. So a really good spring show out of that plant. Maybe at the top of the tried and true, and certainly at the top of the tough list,
Yes.
is creeping phlox. And it will bloom for about a month in the spring.
Yes, it will.
Evergreen,
Yes.
I believe, and a great ground cover for full sun to maybe even part
shade.
Mhm. And then, of course, there's the world of hostas, which there are just hundreds of varieties of, many of which are very good. Do you know which variety this is?
That is probably Halcyon, one of my personal
It is.
favorites. I have that one at my house, and the clumps are beautiful. They are about 4 feet across, and they're outstanding.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, you know, some hostas are fairly slow, but this one tends to clump up a bit more
Yes.
quickly than many, so that gives it a little edge over some of the other hosta varieties. If we look in here, we'll see an Astilbe just getting ready to come up and into bloom. Tell me the real key to growing these well here.
Well, we don't grow them in the shade. We grow them in full sun to part sun. I think they bloom better with a little bit of sun. I think that's most people's mistake, is they put them in a shady spot where they don't get enough sun, and therefore they don't perform.
Tough plant, just barely coming out of the pot, but one I think even from its foliage most people recognize, and this is Rudbeckia goldsturm, another perennial plant of the year early on when they first started that program. For July bloom, I don't think there's anything better.
There's not. It's hard to beat.
One of my favorite ground cover plants, sometimes annual if we have a hard winter, but usually perennial, is Homestead Purple Verbena. This has been out on the market for a number of years now and has proven itself over and over again. I would imagine you all sell a lot of this plant.
Yes, we do.
Great purple flowers like you see here all summer long on a plant, I think most importantly as verbenas go, that does not get mildew.
Yes.
It's really mildew resistant and tolerates our heat and humidity, and actually sort of on the line of lantana, the hotter it gets, the more
better.
it flowers.
Yes.
So, and we're down to our final plant here on the tried and true list, and this is a plant that gardeners have known about for years and years and years, and now all of a sudden it's becoming very popular and the public is all interested in it. This is the hellebore. This is the old-fashioned Lenten rose. Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, it's the plant of the year this year for the Perennial Plant Society. This particular one is a pink lady, and supposedly will have a pink spotted bloom when it does bloom. They are tough as nails once they get established in your shade garden, and they are just a great plant.
They're a little slow to establish sometimes, so you should be prepared to, you know, just know going into it that it may take 2 or 3 years for them to really begin putting on a big show. But once they do, they're there forever.
They're great.
And the show just gets better and better every year. And like you said, the little pink bell-shaped flowers early in the spring, late in the winter many times. They come at a season when you just really need spring so badly, and then all of a sudden there the hellebores are. Beth, thanks again so much for having us
Well, you're
out here to
welcome.
Mary's today. The setting is beautiful, the greenhouses are beautiful. I had a great time looking around, and now that we're finished, I'm going to go shop.
Well, thank you very much.